That's the moment the Party for Socialism and Liberation says was inaudible in the critical incident video showing the police shooting that killed Adam Sykes.
Today we tell Mike Brown and the ruling class that we won't be divided. We've seen these tricks before. Immigrants are not dangerous. Capitalism is.
Welcome to Naptown People's Radio, a weekly podcast brought to you by the Indianapolis branch of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I'm your host, Dani Abdullah, and I'm joined by my comrade and co-host,
Derek Ford.
We're here to guide you through the pressing issues facing Indianapolis from the perspective of our people, not our oppressors. And as organizers involved in these issues, we're not just talking about the news, we're making it happen. Happy Women's History Month! Today is our second episode in celebration of Women's History Month, and Derek and I are going to be discussing our Revolutionary women heroes on this episode today. So we didn't share beforehand, so like the dialogue, the kind of back and forth is going to be spontaneous and authentic. And knowing Derek and myself, I think it's also going to be entertaining because that is honestly the basis of our friendship and our camaraderie.
Laughter.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So I think it's going to be a good episode. You know, the special significance of this holiday this year, it's particularly meaningful for, labor, progressives, socialists, communists, whatever, and for American working women generally, it's to be found in the widespread condemnation among numerous sections of the American people, of Trump's cold-blooded plan to colonize the rest of the world, which he has literally said, point blank, that he wants to take over. He wants to control. The latest, I think, was Cuba, which this is not the first time he said that about Cuba, but, his plan is to take over and control it, right? And so, not to the liking of the imperialist ideologists is the growing indication by millions of Americans, women in particular, because we're talking about women, right? But like Americans in general, of the opposition to this war, and to war in general. Our ardent desire for peace, rejection of the continued lies spread by not just this administration, but by the ruling class in general. Hence a fundamental condition for rallying the masses of American women into the peace camp is to free them of the influence of the agents of imperialism and to arouse their sense of internationalism with millions upon millions of, our sisters across the world, to protect the repressive and death-dealing measures carried through and against the countless women victims, throughout the world, not just in the Middle East, right? But also here in the United States. And Derek and I are going to be getting into some of the women who have helped make significant anti-imperialist advances achieved in united front struggle, both in the theoretical and political terrains. My hope and the hope for, I think, all of us at Naptown People's Radio is that this discussion should serve to inspire the growing struggles of American women and others, right? Not just women, and heighten their consciousness of the need of militant, united front campaigns around the burning demands of the day against monopoly oppression, against war and fascism, But before we talk about our favorite international women, we're going to delve into the Naptown Breakdown. So what's on deck for us today, Derek?
Well, first thing is that a controversial $4 billion data center project in Indianapolis is officially moving forward. But not only is that, problematic and something we'll continue to fight, but so too is the process by which it got approved. It's raising serious questions. So the Metropolitan Development Commission voted yesterday to approve the massive project in Decatur Township despite months of resident opposition. Packed meetings, ongoing concerns about environmental impact, energy usage, and long-term effects on the community. But in the final moments before approval, the project received a key boost. Indy Economic Development Incorporated, a nonprofit chaired by Indianapolis Mayor Joe Hogsett, issued a last-minute endorsement backing the development, a move that appears to have helped push the project just across the finish line. Because the land was already zoned for industrial use, the proposal did not require a rezoning, meaning it bypassed a full city-county council vote and was decided on purely by the Development Commission alone. So, this really shows once again that the system and its representatives don't care about the communities they're impacting, that vote them into power, because if there's anything, anybody takes a glimpse at the news coverage about data centers in Indianapolis over the last, 6 months or a year, it's nothing but opposition to them.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. There's no pro data center petitions out there.
Not from the people.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah. And, it just goes to show where their priorities lie. Right. So we're recording this on Thursday, and on Wednesday, so yesterday, Trump had to show up at a second, quote, dignified transfer, unquote, which is a term for a military funeral. There will likely be many more, but this one is pertinent here to us in Naptown because among the dead was the first Hoosier to be killed in the latest U.S. war of aggression against Iran. So the entire flight crew of the KC-135 died during the crash, and that the KC-135 is a refueling aircraft. The U.S. says it crashed while supporting U.S. military actions against Iran, and the U.S. is denying the deaths resulted from the imperialist war, and they just are stating it was a quote-unquote loss. But overall, hundreds of U.S. service people have died fighting this war that is illegal, immoral, and most importantly, directly against the interests of the people of the U.S. Yeah. On Tuesday, a senior intelligence official told Press TV that 200 troops were killed, U.S. troops were killed, and over 3,000 wounded during the first week of the war alone, and that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard destroyed 150 missile launch platforms, 23 Patriot air defense systems, 36 aircraft and helicopters, and destroyed almost 50% of U.S. weapons stockpiles. Now, the U.S. will try to downplay or deny those claims, but just earlier today, Iran shot down a U.S. F-35 fighter jet, right, a stealth fighter jet that was flying over Iran's central airspace. So, the U.S. and Israel have deployed, F-35s, right? Each of us cost over $100 million, while they're telling us, that this is, going to be quick. I mean, Trump said, in the same speech that it was over, but we had to stay until the job was done, but it's over. But, so they're planning on, deploying another 2,500 service people to go, kill and be killed in Iran because the U.S. cannot win an air war. And that, which is, that's playing out day by day. And of course, the devastation on the Iranian side is much worse because the U.S. is targeting, sanitation sites, factories, the typical infrastructure, critical infrastructure humans need to survive. So that is just all the more reason to resist this war and, to get out in the streets and to say, this is not in our name. This is not our war, not Trump's war. It's a war for capital and imperialism. And we stand with the people of Iran and the Iranian government and the rights to self-determination and sovereignty. And we will, go, we'll die on a hill for that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, absolutely. Here at, I was going to say Naptown People's Radio, but really the Indy Liberation Center, I don't think there's any group here, well, they wouldn't be here, that is pro-war, right? We are very much about peace, anti-imperialist. And so, and we said it here on the podcast, we said it at rallies, but it's us and our children and our loved ones who are going to die, right? So to hear that, that funerals for, a Hoosier, is it doesn't matter if they weren't from here or not, but like,
Right.
you know, that it absolutely obviously hits home. Like that's devastating to hear that. For what? You know, they're gone for what? And like it's a loss, but loss from what? Like that's so weird. And I mean, Trump is a weird dude anyway, but like to not name why these people have lost their lives feels like an additional slap in the face.
Yeah.
You know?
Because it's obvious, right? By like
Yeah.
the absence of an answer is the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, and what were they over there doing? Why are they over there? You know, like why?
What story
Yeah.
are they going to tell this day? You know?
Yeah, you know, like what is? Yeah, that's devastating to hear. And you know, I've talked about this before. Like I come from a military family. Literally, like my my like third great grandfather fought in the Civil War. You know, like obviously a Black man who fought in the Civil War, and so like I have a very long line of military people in my family, and yeah, this is not our war, you know, like it never is. It was never our war. This is the war for like people wanting to make money off of the blood of poor people, regardless of where we live in this world, you know. And here's just another example of it. Yeah, that's so devastating. Is not really even a significant, like that's not even significant enough. I feel like to talk about someone being gone. And then in addition to that, right, we have more and more data centers popping up. And once again, like whether it's, you know, the White House or it's our own mayor, like not listening to the people, and what we are literally, you know, in your face saying like, we do not want this, right? No one, like you said, no one is writing a petition that is pro data center, you know, and the fact that they just keep popping up everywhere in Indiana. I was just talking to my cousin Alicia about this today, actually, but like the fact that they just keep popping up everywhere in Indiana is just like beyond frustrating and devastating to the people who live here. And when I say people, I don't mean just humans. I mean like the animals. I mean like all of us who
environment.
Yeah, right? Like all of us who live here. Yeah, it's just like another example of them not listening. And this is exactly why we're having this segment today, right? Is to talk about like why the people need to stand up and fight back and be militant, because the system is not listening. These like elected officials are not listening, and they're not going to listen until we make them.
Yes, absolutely. And I imagine that the women who we'll be talking about today will be internationalists, right?
Absolutely.
And real anti-imperialists who, you know, we all want peace, but, you know, that is not, there's means to peace. You know, we have to kind of fight for peace, right? I mean, it's like, right, Fred Hampton said, peace if you're willing to fight for it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what we want to do. And, you know, just to sort of, you know, bring this back home in terms of internationalism and the fact that this is not Trump's war, it's not our war. You know, there's in 2003, a former commander of NATO's forces in Europe, Wesley Clark, said he met with a senior military official in Washington in November 2001, so just after the 9/11 attacks, and was shown a list of countries that the U.S. Was going to overthrow the governments of. And that included Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Iran, Somalia, and Sudan. And so, you know, what happened? Iraq, they invaded again for the second time, you know, after like decades of devastating sanctions and a previous bombing campaign. And they toppled the government, but they didn't topple the resistance. But nonetheless, Iraq today is fragmented. Lebanon, there's ongoing Israeli military strikes to just unbelievable. The University of Beirut was just bombed. Several students were killed, university students and faculty. I mean, as a professor, it's like, I can't imagine if Lebanon's not bombing us, Iran's not bombing us. They would never do that.
Yeah.
And then Libya, Libya, the highest standard of living in Africa. Gaddafi, wildly popular. Nelson Mandela said he was like the last great living revolutionary 20th century. 70 years old. I remember the summer. Of that year, he was just out in the streets handing out 2 million weapons, primarily to women, to defend Tripoli. And I'm like, you don't give people guns if they don't like you,
Yeah,
and there was so the only way that quote unquote rebels could have won that war is because the U.S. and Italy were bombing their way. Like the rebels would say, we want to go here, and they'd bomb it.
Yeah.
And kill everybody. So today, Libya is a failed state, and there is slave trade going on, right? Yeah. And Sudan, divided, right? And so Syria, unfortunately, after years and years of a heroic, fight against Daesh, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, these groups, unfortunately, the government of Bashar al-Assad, which is widely popular, and was overthrown. And today, Syria is it's in chaos. Somalia, the U.S. continues to bomb Somalia, and it's like this is an empire in decline and lashing out because it doesn't know what else to do. And that's why the excuses keep changing. And that's why the people that we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about their organizing, but also their theoretical and their political framework, because unless we have that, we can't explain to people. It just seems like a bunch of kind of disconnected things, or, the media tells you something one day and the next day it's different, but you don't really remember it unless you have something like to present a coherent worldview. Right. So I'm excited to hear, first up, I think Dani is going to be going. No, actually I'm going.
You're going to go first.
All right. Well, let me tell you what, you should be real excited about this first one.
Because it's you, or because
right. I'm my favorite woman.
Okay. Oh my gosh. But I'm excited for this discussion. And I think, especially given like the state of the world, the state of the country, and just how people are feeling. I don't want to say maybe like defeated, but people are feeling pretty down right now. And so I think this is going to be a good discussion of revolutionary women and revolutionary optimism as well, in the face of some pretty hard things to face. All right, well, we're going to take a break and we will be right back. And we're back on Naptown People's Radio. So we are going to be getting into our favorite revolutionary women heroes on this segment. I'm excited to hear from Derek. Derek's going to start us off. Take it away. What's on?
All right. Well, I mean, I feel like there were a couple of, as I was thinking about who to choose, I can only choose two. And I mean, even though we have more segments, I couldn't help but go back to Shirley Graham and Shirley Graham Du Bois.
Absolutely.
Because not only is our, art gallery named after her, she's an Indianapolis native. And also November 11th of this year will be the 130th anniversary of her birthday.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Look at that. Okay.
Let's
significant.
Make a note in our, calendar to be celebrating that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the other thing is, of course, Shirley Graham is much less widely known than her, the great W.E.B. Du Bois, right? And there have been several organizers and, communist historiographers who have done a good job at kind of starting to, investigate her on her own terms.
Yes.
Right? Because, but as you know, it wasn't actually... W.E.B. Du Bois went through his own individual transformation, but it was really Shirley who pushed him further to the left, right?
Yeah.
And they, got married shortly after W.E.B. Du Bois's first wife died. And it was interestingly, right, there was a close relationship between James Jackson, who was a Communist Party USA leader, and Esther Cooper Jackson, and then also the Du Boises. As Gerald Horton writes in his book on race women, The Lives of Shirley Graham Du Bois, quote, "It is not surprising that these two couples were together at this historic moment when Du Bois joined the Communist Party." Right? Because they had such a long, history of working together. So that said, of course, they didn't join the Communist Party for a long time. And I think Du Bois was like 96 or in his 90s.
Yeah.
But, as we know, one of the most interesting things that I think is that Shirley helped move him to the left and continued on that work after his passing.
Yeah.
And so one of the most interesting ways in which she did that was precisely through the work that she did and Du Bois's various developments in his perspective on color, right? The color line, as he called it, race, and colonialism pertaining to obviously the European and U.S. and Africa, but also Japan and China and Korea. So of course I hate to talk about, Shirley Graham by talking about her husband, later husband, right? But this is the entryway into it because it is quite profound. So, on Du Bois's second trip to the Soviet Union, he also was able to make his way through, further east and to China and to Japan. And at that point, he was fully in favor of the alliance between Chiang Kai-shek, the nationalists, and Mao Zedong, the communist forces in China. And which was the correct move. Of course, there was later a betrayal. And in his, he wrote a lot for the Pittsburgh Courier during this time, documenting his travels. And they really cover a wide range of issues, including Manchuria, which Japan basically went into China and carved it up and artificially created the state of Manchuria. Right? And now that is where the Korean and Chinese resistance, like the revolutionary resistance in China, coalesced. That's where a chairman, Kim Il-sung, was born. That's where he, grew up. That's where he fought. That's where they won the struggle. But it's interesting because the Japanese are taking him around because he sees that Japanese colonialism, he argues, is better than U.S. imperialism. So he's so he's kind of so he's calling for the unity, right, of the darker nations, right, the colored nations, at the same time as he's acknowledging the differences and acknowledging that there is Japan is an imperialist power, subjugating China, but it's a kind of benevolent colonialism or a colonialism that can maybe transform into unity on a progressive basis at this point in time in his thinking. So, he did he wrote, colonial enterprise by a colored nation need not imply the caste, exploitation, and subjugation as it did with white Europe. So he just brushes aside the question as to whether Manchuria is independent, right, or a colony of Japan. The main question for me is, what is Japan doing for the people of Manchuria, and how is she doing it? And of course, he wasn't like deep in the mountains of Manchuria, so he couldn't know this. But they were not doing great things to the people of Manchuria during this point in time. And so the support for Japan was like, well, obviously, let's like take advantage of this, and he basically saw it as a benign form of colonialism, although he acknowledged that.
Such an interesting phrase, a benign form of colonialism. Okay.
Yeah, and that is a direct quote. Yeah.
How unfortunate. Okay.
Yeah, no. Well, we all develop, right?
Yeah.
So that's why we don't, Yeah. So he basically like at this point in time thinking, okay, unlike in the Soviet Union where the government, has control over like it's a people's government, right, run by workers, right? Manchuria is not like that, right? But in one of his posthumously published autobiographies, he does recall his distress that like the greatest city of the most populous nation on earth was like owned by foreigners. Speaking about modern day Beijing, right?
Yeah.
And he also did witness like incidents of racial discrimination between Japanese and Chinese people.
Yeah.
And he was also, I think this is like World War II when Japan is like supposedly an enemy of the U.S.
Right. Yeah. And so there's so much happening right now, right? I think that historical context is really important for this. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's like dangerous to be pro-China. It's also dangerous to be pro-Japan.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay.
And so when he went to Japan again and was treated, like a celebrity, right? And taken all around. This is in the 1950s. And he basically continued to justify Japan's expansion into the region by arguing that like it was Asia's defense against Europe.
Okay.
So, and he just kind of ignored or downplayed Japan's ongoing atrocities against China and Korea to insist that the two nations did share that same goal, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And if you can think about it too, like right after there's a unity between Chiang Kai-shek's forces, the nationalist and the communist forces, right? That after that there's a betrayal, and all of a sudden, the CCP comrades are slaughtered, right? And unfortunately, the Comintern decided to continue to support the nationalist forces, right, for quite a time, just because they were the best bet against defeating Japan.
Yep.
And that was something for which, that's why Mao went to the Soviet Union to meet with Stalin for a very long time, and work through that, right? And they were eventually sort of forgiven for that error, right? Because they understood it, why they would sort of do it. And by that time, the Communist International had kind of degraded. It's like an arm piece of Soviet diplomacy. But what happens is when the Korean War breaks out, right? Shirley Graham Du Bois was already, before W. Du Bois, not a member of the Communist Party, but hanging out with communists in Harlem, in New York. Paul Robeson, right? Also Liu Liangmo, who we have a great 2-part piece on Liberation School about, who was a Chinese revolutionary in the U.S. building links between Black, New African, and, New African was in use at the time, Black Americans and Asian Americans, and just Black people in Asia in general. And so after the Civil War broke out in China between the communists and the nationalists, he, lent his support to the communists, denounced, because he's in the NAACP, so he's at standing. Yeah. Like he can get a line to Woodrow Wilson, right? You know what I mean? Like Harry Truman. And he's like, why aren't you recognizing the the real government of China on the United Nations, right? Because that's one of the unfortunate circumstances that led to the Korean War being like given the go-ahead by the UN, is that they refused to give the legitimate government of China like the seat. And so Chiang Kai-shek's government was, which wasn't a government at all, was on there. And the Soviets were boycotting it because of that. Because they were boycotting it, that's why the U.S. was able to do the Korean War, conduct the Korean War under the United Nations and NATO, right?
Okay.
And so he eventually was tried under the Anti-Communist Smith Act, both he and his wife.
Yeah.
But of course that fell apart. But they did have their passports revoked for about 2 years, I think, until they're able to get them back. But during this time, he's still speaking. He's still, and Shirley Graham Du Bois is also has much broader connections within the U.S. And so is almost seen as like a mother-like figure. And this becomes important in like the 60s, and especially after Du Bois's death, when many people look up to her as like a mother figure, especially the people who are to come later, right? Would look, many of them were young men, young Black men, revolutionary men, and you would often see her like surrounded by young, up and coming leaders of the Black liberation struggle, asking questions or just like hanging on her every word, for the pictures, right? And you can see it in the pictures. So it was really Shirley that helped him really finalize his understanding that, that race is an artificial construction and it is rooted in material reality, and that's what has to be transformed. And so that's why it becomes, not that race is unimportant and the race line disappears, but class is, really the material productions, right? Like of, material production becomes important, right? The socioeconomic relations. That's what she was doing throughout the 40s because she had the advanced like knowledge that he didn't, right? Ahead of time.
Exactly.
And so they were able to, that's how she was able to really shift his perception, right, about China and like be anti-Japanese. Finally.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say we gotta get there.
All right.
I was like, we gotta.
I know.
Because I'm like, oh my gosh, W.E.B. Du Bois is out here talking about imperialism light.
I know.
This is fine. This is fine. Okay. All right.
But again, we have no like heroes who are
Absolutely, right?
So.
Like I think that's actually like as someone who I definitely would say like that was one of when I started doing like my quote unquote activist work, like W.E.B. Du Bois was like one of my heroes, right? And still is, right? Still is.
Same.
But like I think that's a really good way to kind of like humanize him. Right? Like he didn't have all the answers. Like he also needed assistance, of course, from a woman, but like, but like outside help, right? Like we don't wake up and we're revolutionaries and we have all the answers and the thing is actually we're never going to have all the answers. That's impossible. Dialectics in a psychological way is right there. Two opposing things can be true at the same time, so we're never going to have all the answers, but I think that's a really cool way to like humanize him and like, he didn't have it correct, there. And here Shirley Graham comes and she's like, let me hip you to this real quick, like let's tweak this a little and like, which is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what like, that's why I wanted to kind of introduce it that way because he is this great figure.
Absolutely.
But like, of course, the woman behind him is, not recognized as much, at least like, I mean, she is in some like our spaces, right?
Right. But on the grand scheme of things, right. A lot of people don't know who Shirley Graham is, or if they do, right. It's, that's W.B. Du Bois' second wife.
Yeah.
Right? Like, but she was the one who, like, really, at least later on in his life, was like, hey, what the hell are you talking about?
I mean, more or less. I mean, I would love to have like been a fly on the wall for those conversations.
I can only imagine. I mean, like, two like intellectuals also, and again, W.B. Du Bois at this point is like W.B. Du Bois, right?
Yeah.
So like to be able to, like, what an amazing person to be able to like go in and have this conversation with him, and not only have this conversation, but he's also listening.
Yeah, and won over.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's also, that's what got him to drop his talented 10th thesis, right?
Wow.
On the way, yeah.
Wow.
But I mean, as for Shirley herself, right? I mean, so in Ghana, during the 1960s, that's when a lot of Black nationalists were, going there,
Yep.
And Pan-Africanists, Marxists from all around the world. She was really, a prominent figure during that time. And so, as I was alluding to earlier, right? Like, she had like adopted sons in the movement, right? Malcolm X, Kwame Nkrumah, Stokely Carmichael, right? And she was like the mother of the motherland in a sense, carrying on the legacy and bringing it back to the U.S. And then she often would continue traveling to China. She did after her husband's death. And she, grew up, of course, she was a playwright. She was a remarkably talented person.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
playwright, raising kids, just a remarkable person. And we should have a like Noah Leininger, who can talk more about her play sometime, because it's I tried to do it and I don't have the the reference points or whatever. But Shirley Graham was actively supporting Ghana's struggle for independence. And then of course when that kind of, I don't want to say fell through, right? Then she kind of, made her way towards Maoist China. And that's when those visits became frequent. And in fact, she is today buried in China, right?
Yeah.
And not just any place in China, but in like the same place, like their martyrs, cemetery, right?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, which is really quite remarkable. And goes to speak how, we hear all this stuff about, well, the Chinese, they were manipulating them to get Black people to hate the U.S. government as if they didn't have their own reasons.
Baby, I don't need an excuse. You ain't got to convince me of too much, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, the Bolsheviks, the Russians are sowing divisions, it's like Russiagate bullshit,
Yeah.
Or, excuse me. It's like Russiagate. I know. Dakota, edit it out if you can. It's like that Russiagate nonsense, right? Because if you read that report, it's basically like Russian television outlets were covering divisive American issues like police brutality and Occupy Wall Street and the protests against the Dakota Access Pipeline. Yeah. And okay, so great. I'm glad they were.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, and, she was engaging in a range of debates too, particularly in Muhammad Speaks, as NOI, and other Black outlets throughout this time in the U.S. when she was in the Soviet Union, in the People's Republic of China, about, basically like China's role in Africa. And that reminds me of what George Jackson wrote, to his father about China's investment in Tanzania, right? Yeah. So, so just like an incredible woman. Absolutely. And one without whom there would be no W.E.B. Du Bois.
Really? I mean, because honestly, if he hadn't changed that narrative, I feel like you and I would probably not be sitting here talking about W.E.B. Du Bois, and at least not in like a positive light, yeah, that's wow. I think that's amazing, and I think that the fact that she's a Naptown native, is so cool, because you don't really hear about revolutionaries from Indianapolis, Indiana, but like the Midwest in general, right? Like that's not really like a thing. And for her to be from here, to be so talented, to be so brilliant, and she's literally buried in China, and like their martyr like cemetery is just like really speaks volumes of like the internationalism that she was able to like accomplish, right? Like it's not just about like the liberation of Black people. Of course it's about the liberation of Black people, but it's the liberation of all people, right? And for them to acknowledge that when the United States still does not acknowledge that, is amazing.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what we're doing here too. Like we don't see ourselves as like confined to Naptown. Not that we, are this grandiose vision of ourselves as like influencing the world or anything, but we do see ourselves as one anchor in a world's ongoing historic transformation, right?
Absolutely.
And just to be remembered that like not only was she born here, but she transformed, she was so influential in the struggles to come, you know?
Right.
And we want her to be influential in the struggles to come, like in our time, because we should look to her, because her writing, her thinking about this is far more advanced than so much of ours is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because she's had decades to do studies of it.
And I mean, I think that goes to like, listening to our elders, and not in like a toxic way, but like listening to our elders, the idea that, Stokely Carmichael, Malcolm X, right? Like they were listening to her and were taking, what she had to say to heart and then building upon it. That's what it's about, right? Like that's why we study. That's why we talk to our elders. We listen, and Derek's my elder, and like, but I mean, that was a jab, but also like Derek has been doing this longer than I have. And it would be like, what's a nice way to put this? It would be dumb to like not listen to someone who's been doing this work longer than you have, and so for them to have Shirley Graham as not just someone like for us, we can read about and we can learn from her this way, but like they were actually able to talk to her is amazing, and also like irreplaceable.
Yes. Yes. Irreplaceable.
Yeah.
That's exactly the word, because without those in-person conversations that the CIA wasn't interfering in.
Yeah.
Carrying on the continuity.
Yes, there we go.
That struggle, the international continuity, we will bring that back. And I think that I want to pick Shirley Graham because it's like from Naptown to the Soviet Union to Ghana, to the PRC to Korea. One woman, one revolution.
Yeah.
One that we will win for her.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
That was a great one. That's a great one to start off with. I'm like nervous. No, that was a great one to start off with. No, Shirley Graham Du Bois is amazing. And I'm so like, I'm like sad that I didn't learn about Shirley Graham until we named our gallery after her. And I was like, I don't know who the heck that is, but all right, cool. And then, but I was like, Du Bois, all right. Like, and she was married to him. Like, unfortunately, right. That was my thinking, was like, oh, Shirley Graham Du Bois, she was married to W.E.B. Du Bois. Cool, whatever. And then as I've learned more about her since our gallery has been named after her, because, I was like, I should probably learn something about this woman we've named our gallery after. Like, the more I learn, the more I'm like, wow, like what an amazing human being. It absolutely makes sense that would be one of your heroes. Yeah, love it.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing yours, Dani. I'm really excited. I can't tell you, listeners, how excited I am. Also nervous, but excited.
Why are you nervous?
I don't know.
Why are you nervous?
I'm just messing around.
Okay.
After a short break, we will be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to Naptown People's Radio. It is our second episode in celebration of Women's History Month, and Dani and I are discussing the women revolutionaries in our tradition who have inspired and continue to inspire us the most. And so after that discussion about Shirley Graham, Dani is going to unveil, let us know one of the first women who came to her mind.
Yes, that was so dramatic. I love that. That was amazing. So first, one of the first revolutionaries who came to my mind was Claudia Jones. Claudia Jones was a revolutionary communist and anti-colonial activist. And she was actually born Claudia Vera Cumberbatch, which, she was born on February 21st, 1915 in Port of Spain, Trinidad. And so Cumberbatch is, I don't know if y'all watch like superhero movies, but I'm always like, I wonder if her and Doctor Strange are like related because that's his last name. So Cumberbatch, yeah. So
probably
he might have his people might have owned her people at some point. So I don't know. Somebody look into that. But Jones spent her life fighting for the liberation of the workers of the world. She was outspoken on issues of race, gender, and she really utilized her position in CPUSA, Communist Party USA, to advance the causes of oppressed people. Not just in the U.S., not just in Trinidad, but literally throughout the world, right? So throughout her lifetime, she really championed like many causes, which included education, housing, healthcare, a lot of the things that, we here in the Liberation Center and us in the Party for Socialism and Liberation are constantly doing. So, yeah. So, of course, this was one of the first people I thought of. Claudia, she moved to New York City when she was about 8 years old. And like many immigrants, economic hardship forced Jones and her family to immigrate to the U.S. That was about in 1920. And so in 1936, she joined the campaign to free the Scottsboro Boys. If you're not familiar with, the Scottsboro Boys, it was 9 Black teenagers who were falsely accused of raping 2 white girls. Story as old as time, unfortunately. And at the time, the Communist Party was leading the movement to free the Scottsboro Boys. And Jones joined the Youth Communist League as a result of this. So she found in the organization comrades who would fight for the causes that were important to her. And, chief among such causes were the liberation of Black people and of women, right? In fact, Jones credited her experiences as a Black working class woman in Jim Crow America for her understanding the scientific Marxist-Leninist philosophy and is the antithesis of racist ideas. So for myself, as someone who, I didn't study Marx, I didn't study Lenin when I started calling myself a socialist. I was studying Claudia Jones. I was studying, Richard Wright, those who were calling themselves Marxist-Leninists. But like, it's the thing about science, right, is really just like observation and like literally studying. Like socialism is not like Marx did not invent socialism, right? Like
very clear about that.
Yeah, he says that. Like he did not invent this, right? Like socialism was happening everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Like Marx was just like writing it down and kind of like spreading it, but like he did not invent it. Like it's not like socialism is not like a white concept. I'll say it like that. But Claudia Jones, she advocated for greater diversity in progressive and revolutionary organizations. And one of her most well-known essays, An End to the Neglect of the Problems of the Negro Woman, Jones argued that in order to effectively mobilize the Black community, the Communist Party needed to address the issues facing Black women. Revolutionary, which it was. I was being sarcastic, but also like, yeah, if you want Black people to join, you have to address Black issues. Unfortunately, there's still socialists who still have not grasped that concept. And in this article, Jones gave historical context to Black women's roles as leaders and organizers in their communities. She admonished progressives for failing to include Black women, both organizationally and socially. She wrote that, quote, winning the Negro women for the struggle for peace and decisive for all other struggles, unquote. So, according to Jones, Black women's position in the working class makes them the most capable of understanding the evils of the racist capitalist system and therefore the need for socialism. Claudia Jones prioritized the need to end racism and chauvinism in all of its forms, noting that the battle of the sexes narrative that was often presented in the media and academia only ever served to divide and further oppress working class people. So Jones knew that myths of women's inferiority are a tool that was and continues to be used to keep working class people from recognizing their mutual interest and breaking away from the capitalist system, which is, one of the reasons why on Naptown People's Radio, we were like, okay, we're going to have, Derek and Dani do this together, right? Because not only is this a quote unquote racial, Derek is a white man. I was like, what am I trying to say here? But also it's a difference of, cultural background. It's a difference of race, whatever the heck that means. But that, it was very purposeful, right? And also Derek and I rip off each other very well. And so it was that as well. But
I like to consider us friends.
We are friends. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
No, we are. Yeah, absolutely. We're comrades first, but we are also friends. We have developed a friendship from being comrades. And that's literally one of the things that Claudia was talking about, right? It was the sex and the race is just another way to divide us, right? Now, as a member of the Communist Party of the United States, Jones was able to develop her skills as an organizer and a journalist. So she wrote for CPUSA's newspaper, which was the Daily Worker, and was the editor of the Youth Communist League's Weekly Review. And after becoming a full member in 1945, Jones became a prominent leader in the party. She continued to work on various publications and was even elected to the National Committee of the party in 1948. Now, the U.S. government persecuted Claudia Jones, as they did many members of the Communist Party, right? Derek was literally just talking about the Du Boises and how they were persecuted as well. And in 1948, she was arrested under the Smith Act for teaching Marxism, right? So in total, she was arrested 3 times. And by 1955, she was deported and sent to live in England. Which is an interesting choice that they sent her to England, but they sent her to England. And when she was asked, about her deportation, she stated, and this is a quote, "I was deported from the USA because as a Negro woman, communist of West Indian descent, I was a thorn in their side in my opposition to Jim Crow racist discrimination against 16 million Negro Americans. My work for redress of these grievances, for unity of Negro and white workers, for women's rights, because I fought for peace, because I urged the prosecution of lynchers rather than prosecution of communists and other democratic Americans who opposed the lynchers and big financiers and warmongers, the real advocates of force and violence in the USA." Now, I hear that, unquote, sorry. But I hear that and I'm like, okay, yeah. I don't feel like people should be able to lynch people. I feel like, the banks are taking advantage of people. Those are the real criminals. That doesn't feel
controversial.
Yeah. That doesn't really feel like a hot take. Hey, you shouldn't, kill people because they're Black or because they're Jewish or because they're gay or, you should not do that. And if you do that, you should go to jail. Wild. I don't feel like you should be able to just take people's homes because they can't afford it anymore, right? These concepts should not be revolutionary, and yet they were then, and they still are today. Maybe not the lynching, but lynches look different now, right? It doesn't always look like it. Sometimes it does, but it doesn't always look like a Black man hanging from a tree anymore. Sometimes it looks like he had a gun.
Exactly.
I feared for my life.
Yep.
You know,
And that's precisely the kind of, state-sanctioned terrorism that overthrew the Reconstruction era.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it's exactly the same one that's overthrowing the second Reconstruction era of the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And and you're right. Today it's even, becoming just so normalized, but people aren't having it anymore. That's for sure.
No, the people are definitely able to like see and connect those dots that maybe weren't as apparent before, but like are now, right? Which is dope to see. It's beautiful to see. So Jones, upon her arrival in England, she sought out members of the Communist Party. Shocker, right? So she found that much like its American counterpart, the party struggled with combating racism. So she aligned herself with the Communist Party of Great Britain, which was the only party there addressing imperialism and racial inequalities at the time. So in England, Jones worked with Afro-Caribbean communities, and much of her work addressed fair housing and education. And she also played a major role in organizing the Notting Hill Carnival. So she stressed the importance of the artists and the community, stating that a people's art is the genesis of their freedom. Jones exposed the connection between the communities with which she worked and imperialism. She utilized the skills she had developed as a journalist in CPUSA to run a Caribbean newspaper called the West Indian Gazette, in which she updated readers on anti-imperialist struggles around the world. Jones continued to fight for the liberation of women, Africans, and members of the African diaspora. The eradication of colonialism and imperialism throughout the world remained central to her organizing. And Claudia Jones worked tirelessly to advance the causes of socialism and liberation from the time she was 18 years old until, she died in 1964. And, actually, I think it says a lot that Claudia Jones is buried like right next to Karl Marx, which I remember like when I saw Karl Marx's like headstone for the first time, which have you ever seen his Karl Marx's headstone? Like Karl Marx would have hated his, he would have hated it. It's like this huge bust of his head. I'm like, yeah, he would have been like, what is, how much money like you could have spent this on like buying people food or something. Like it's ridiculous. But
also you at least make it look nice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like this brutalist.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm pretty sure his arms weren't like,
Yeah, it's a little, I've only seen it in video, but like from the video I saw, I'm like, yeah, this is not great. This is not great. I've never met the guy, but I feel like he would have hated this. But Claudia Jones is buried like right next to him, which I think really just goes to show like the impact that she had on the world, again, not just people in New York, not just people in Trinidad, but like not just people in England, but like people of the world. And like her going into these predominantly white spaces, predominantly men spaces, and making room for not just herself, but other women, other Black women, and saying, no, actually, you're going to listen to what I have to say. And you cannot be a real socialist, a real communist, if you are not talking about Black people, if you're not talking about women, if you're not international, Claudia Jones, one of, I think, the most brilliant people who has ever lived.
Yeah. I mean, I can only but second that. And because I think that, one, it's like her political organizing and also her acute intellect, which wasn't just like, oh, this is an interesting thing. Like, let me critique you here or there, right? And make it more precise. But like, let me make this more precise so we can advance our strategy and tactics, right? Yeah. And of course, building on her predecessors, right? Oftentimes people cite this, Du Bois joined the Socialist Party in like 1910, 1909, and lasted a year because they didn't take race seriously. It was like a secondary problem. So he bounced and he, wrote something against it. But then it's like, that's where the story ends. Exactly. And they don't realize that that's before the Communist Revolution happened in Russia, right? The Bolshevik Revolution, which is the revolution that did not take place in a white country, right? That liberated, all of the oppressed nations within the Russian Empire, and that went on to to at great lengths, help other people liberate themselves. And that's why, by the height of the 1920s, 3/5 of the world's population was living not under colonialism, but under socialism or like independent governments, right? And progressive ones. I think it also just corrects this notion that like, that it's a white man's thing or whatever, because actually like, even people before Claudia Jones, like Williana Burroughs, for example, like they were crucial to building the Communist Party in the U.S. Because
for sure.
When after the Bolshevik Revolution and the world movement, it was called socialist, but then it was called communist, right? Like now we're communist movement. When that happened, all some people from the socialist parties joined the communist parties. In the U.S., it was a merger. Many people from the industrial workers of the world joined. All members of the African Black Brotherhood were members of the Communist Party. And so from the very beginning, they were paying attention to the Black question in the United States. And thanks to, people like Williana Burroughs and others, the woman question. And Claudia Jones' theory of, super exploitation, super oppression, right? The triple oppression of, the Black or, the Negro women worker.
Which like people today would say intersectionality, but like, right, it's not just intersectionality. Right? It's actually way bigger than that.
Yeah, because here's the thing, like intersectionality, you read that, article by Kimberly Crenshaw and it's a legal article.
Yes.
She's making an argument to the court under the legal framework of the United States that at this moment in time, there is no way for me to claim like discrimination based on my identity as a Black woman. Right? I have to be Black or a woman. It's a legalistic framework and it's not an organizing framework.
No.
Right?
No.
Whereas the article that you cited, right, towards an end to the neglect of the problems of the Negro women.
Yes.
Like that is she's basing it on like data. She's like, we have this many, Black women workers working in this industry, the domestic industry. What's the revolutionary potential? Because when you're organizing, that's where you go. It's not like, okay, who's working in a factory? Let's go organize there. It doesn't matter where they are, right? If they're producing surplus value directly or not, Teachers are absolutely important to the reproduction of this city. So when they go on strike, it definitely messes things up. The ongoing struggles within the party because they did a tremendous job, multinationalizing the party, bringing Black women workers in, women workers in, and eradicating because comrades, right? We also share a positive vision of the future that we try to enact today.
Absolutely.
So, you and I are not equal in this world right now. But when we call each other comrade, we place ourselves in a relation in the future where we are equal, And so I think that's like that forward lookingness is important. And so that's why she was best friends with like Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, right? Who was always by her side. And she was never afraid to call out her comrades, call in, whatever you want to say. I don't know what the latest PC term is, but like
I think it's call in now.
Identify an error and correct it and propose corrections. Really, that's all it is. And when you're comrades, you don't need to worry about what you call it because you know that it's not about you. It's about advancing the struggle forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, but that is like the difference between like, I think a comrade and even an ally, right? Because like an ally is somebody who is like oh my gosh, I care so much about these people and like, let me help you. And, like, but whereas a comrade, like this is like your struggle is my struggle. And, I know with my comrades, if my comrades are saying, hey, this is an area of improvement, right? I don't have to worry about like, well, are you just saying that to be like an a-hole? Or are you like, does that really need to be improved? Or are you maybe like making a snarky comment? No, this is because I want to win.
Yes.
Right. Like we want to win. So like we have to improve this so that we can win. And that's exactly what Claudia was doing in CPUSA, was like, hey, we have to address this. And when she got to, Great Britain as well, right? Like she was like, hey, we have to address this. Here's how we can do it. If we see all these problems and we're calling them out, but we're not providing solutions, then like really you just like should not speak, right? Like you just shouldn't say anything if you see a problem, but you're not able to like even help work on a solution. Maybe you don't have the answer, but like here's an idea.
Yeah. Or like I'm willing to work on it.
Yeah.
Who's willing to work with me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think Claudia also reminds me a lot of, today as a Black person, like a lot today that I'll see people like, oh, Black people don't get involved in what's going on with ICE. Like, don't get involved in this. We've done enough for this country, which I wholeheartedly agree. I feel like Black people have done a lot for this country.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not here to argue that, but like,
whose country?
Whose country? Yeah. But also like, if none of us we're not going to win if we're just like, y'all got to figure it out. Y'all figure it out. Like I've done enough. Like, and as much as I'm like, yeah, I feel like I have done enough. I feel like I am tired, but I'm also like, it's not going to improve if I'm not doing something, if I'm not working with others to improve it. I can't sit back and be like, oh man, these white people out here, they don't even know what they're doing. But y'all got to figure it out because I'm tired, because I'm not doing it. Like that doesn't even make sense, right? Like the logic is not logicking, So
well put.
And so I applaud Claudia Jones for not only, being an immigrant and a young Black woman and probably being tired, right? But like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to step up so that we can win. And I'm going to pull other people into this as well. And in fact, I see that y'all not really talking about Black issues right now. If you're not talking about Black issues, then like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Absolutely. And why aren't you talking about it?
Yeah.
And I'm not just going to be like, oh, well, you're, racist, so peace, right?
Yeah.
But like, let's address this. And it's also, incumbent on, me to do that too, right? I mean, that's the whole thing. We're comrades. We share responsibilities like that, right? And, the other thing is that just, reading, especially to go back to the Du Boises, right?
Yeah.
In the 1950s, not a great time to be a communist, an open communist, or even affiliate with them, right?
No. Not at all.
And so, Claudia Jones could have like gone underground. She could have just gone lived a quiet life, because you bet I'm damn right she was tired after, being a communist. I mean, we've been organizing nonstop in Indianapolis for how long? Like 7 years or something. This time had been doing it for like decades.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
I mean, that would have been very tempting. And I'm sure that people would have like hooked her up with a place to stay.
Oh,
but she was like,
absolutely.
you know what? No, I'm going to continue to fight. Not only that, but like, I'm going to continue to speak out publicly, even though they are like, keep like trying me with the Smith Act, you know? And so the main thing, of course, is the U.S. war against Korea, right? Which begins on, June 25th of 1950 is when the Koreans went to reclaim the entirety of the peninsula from the U.S. occupiers. Although because they were welcomed throughout the South, because all the like Koreans in the South who were fighting for the U.S. just like defected, and then everybody who greeted them would like fed them and greeted them as liberators. Within 3 days they'd captured Seoul. Within 3 months they were like basically took over the entire peninsula. That's when General MacArthur's army came in through the Incheon seaport. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's an Incheon airport. And I know the guy, Reverend Lee, who's always burning his Douglas MacArthur statue down. He's incredible. Yeah. He works with, he lives with An Hak Sap, who is the guy from the North.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Well, from the South, but yeah. You can read about him on Liberation School. But regardless, there was such anti-communist hysteria, right? That like, there was so like, that's why it's the forgotten war, is because you couldn't really talk about it. You couldn't be against it. But what did she do? Before the war even started, in her Women's Day speech in March of 1950, right? She knew it was coming. And she was like, let's start organizing against this. And it has to be a black women communist-led struggle for peace.
Absolutely.
Because who are going to be receiving the first body bags coming home from killing another colored people, in her words, right?
Yeah. Right.
Who we are, right? And so we need to get in there now and start building this struggle. Yeah. And then internally in the party, and these are also written in Political Affairs magazine, right. She's saying like, look at, some black women come into the party and they're basically sort of like treated like they are, just being, I don't know, like they have amazing capacity. They're organizers at the church. Like they have 1,000 people organized at their church, but those aren't being recognized as talents and such. And so she would just identify that, and she wouldn't be like, so therefore all of you are terrible and we should expel you, who have done this. But no, just identifying the problem and being like, the problem is a solution, right? Exactly. What we do is we cultivate them. We cultivate that because that's who we reach out to, And so, and also, it's too bad that I don't think Harry Haywood and Claudia Jones ever connected. Although Harry Haywood in his autobiography does mention Claudia Jones's pieces in the 40s, trying to really reclaim the revolutionary line on the black question and the black woman question. Because of course, he was also central to it. But that's Claudia Jones. I mean, shout out, I mean, that's the kind of perseverance. Like, you think we sacrifice today?
Right. I am a socialist in 2026, right? I'm not a socialist in 1948, 1950, right? Like very, very different things. I'm not going to get us on a soapbox about like how it seems like people, not that people aren't persecuted right now, right? There are definitely, we have reporters who are being thrown in jail right now. So it's not like it's not a thing, but it is not the same thing as what, Shirley Graham was going through, what Claudia Jones was going through, what Richard Wright was going through, right? Like we're not talking about the same things. And like we have a podcast, right? Like we are very open. We can write articles, right? And actually like, just like you said, with her continuing to speak out and write, and like she obviously, well, maybe not obviously, Jones had, probably still has an FBI file, right? And, it really like goes into like, there was like an FBI agent who like talks about her file and like and goes into like the cumulative body of her writings, right? That provided the documentary evidence that the state used against her, to deport her eventually, right? Like literally her writing, it's not her going and storming the Capitol. It's not her going and killing people. It was not her, even telling people to go kill people, right? It's literally her saying, hey, Negroes, white people need to get together and figure this out together. Women, we have to come up and fight and be revolutionary. We should not be pro war at all, right? But in your example, right, she's talking about, Korea, right? Like, she's writing and she's just talking about peace and justice for people who actually deserve it, actual justice for all. And that is what they used to deport her, you know?
And can I read a little bit from her closing statement to Judge Dimrock?
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And we can post this in the show notes because it's in the book that Iskra Books put out about Claudia Jones and the bestial war on Korea. But so she's talking to the judge, right? And and also the prosecution, right? And she says, you introduce a title page to show Claudia Jones wrote an article during the indictment period, but you dare not even read a line of it, even to a biased jury on which sat a lone Negro juror, there by mere accident, since he was an alternate, right, well through most of the trial. You dare not, gentlemen of the prosecution, assert that Negro women can think and speak and write. So, they admit this piece of writing, but they won't read it.
They won't read it.
Because they don't want to acknowledge that, this is, this is an intellectual article. And also, it's true. And but most importantly, they don't want the press reporting on it and recirculating it and other people hearing it.
Exactly.
So as we enter this new era of rejuvenated McCarthyism, which dates back to the First World War, right? We should be, revisiting these revolutionaries, the repression they underwent, and how they got through it, right? How they carried on that tradition, that legacy. Because even if, the leaders are arrested, the struggle goes on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's... Even if the leaders are arrested, the struggle goes on, and that's what the party's for.
You can jail a revolutionary, but you can't jail a revolution.
I feel like we got to post it. It might say something along the lines of that. Same thing with the art quote that you read by Claudia Jones. Yeah. We got some dope posters here at the Indy Liberation store. And
that was a good plug.
We happen to be participating in the Indy book crawl this weekend. So go to indyliberationstore.com or the Indianapolis Liberation Center website. Check out our extended hours and our programming. Come get yourself some, come learn about, Claudia Jones and Shirley Graham. Come learn about other women revolutionaries. We have an excellent edited collection of works by Charisse Bernstelli and our comrade Jody Dean on it, on the subject, as well as plenty of other books. So we hope to see you there. We will see you there.
We will see you there. Yeah. You could also just pull up. Yeah. You could just pull up to the store. Yeah. 1619 Prospect Street.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. And we'd love to meet you.
Yeah.
And we'll be having special extended hours throughout the entirety of the Indy book crawl. Thursday, the day we're recording this, 12 to 8 p.m. There's going to be an open house, music, art, refreshments. Friday, March 20th, will be open from 12 to 8 p.m. And we'll have an event in the evening called Poetry as Protest. It's an open mic event, so come on through, sign up. Saturday, March 21st, we open from 12 to 8 p.m. also. And at 1 o'clock, we have our first meeting of the Pedagogy of the Oppressed study group, a classic text by Paulo Freire, led by one of our key organizers here, who is an excellent educator, an excellent organizer, and somebody who really actually blends theory and praxis together in exactly the way that Paulo Freire talked about. It can be kind of a hard book to read if you're not familiar with some of the terms that he's using. So it really is helpful. I'm looking forward to it. That's going to be from 1 to 3 on Saturday. Sunday, the store will be open from 10 to 6. And then from between 1 and 3 that day, we have Hope Packages monthly assembly. And then
mark your calendars for next Wednesday when the Party for Socialism and Liberation will be hosting our monthly Liberation Forum. This one is titled War is a Women's Issue at Home and Abroad. So we'll be talking about providing an objective appraisal of the Iranian Revolution, the real gains that happened, dispelling the myths circulating throughout the mainstream media, and also uncovering the real reasons why the U.S. is at war and has been at war against the Iranian Revolution. We will be going through the real history of the women's struggle in the U.S., particularly focusing on the much misunderstood, quote-unquote, second wave women's movement in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, which is often presented as a sort of white middle-class movement, which really couldn't be further from the truth, and does a lot of violence and in silencing the women and others from, our class and oppressed nationalities who made it into a truly mass movement that won significant gains. And of course, we'll be, looking to draw connections between the struggle, against imperialism and for women's liberation, and strategizing on how to unite these struggles and move the movement forward in the U.S. and in Indianapolis. So we hope to see you at any and all of those events. And as Dani said, you can just feel free to pop on by anytime.
That's it for this episode of Naptown People's Radio. If you found today's discussion useful, pass it on, leave a comment, or show some love by donating at support.pslindianapolis.org and by shopping at indyliberationstore.com or coming in. The road ahead is long, but we walk it together. Study with your comrades, build with your community, and always remember, theory without action is paralysis, but action without theory is chaos. Once again, I'm your host, Derek Ford, here with my comrade and co-host,
Dani Abdullah.
Stay dangerous, stay disciplined, and stay in the struggle.
We say all power to the people. That means that we are our own liberators. We don't depend on nobody else. We depend on ourselves. And we take responsibility for ourselves. And therefore, we step up for our organization. Those that have proven by their actions and their practice that they represent for us. All power to the people in peace.
Collaboration. We act as if there's a scarcity of rights. If gay people get rights, women can't have rights. But that's not true. A victory for one is a victory for all. As Dani's just saying, And
you talk about people being fearless in the face of whoever there is. They don't care. To the Liberation Center, I would say, this is what we need.